You know, everybody come to me. They say, Clive, what you think of the FPL? And I say, hey, it's gonna help NA. The FPL is going to save North America. The Face It Pro League is the best thing that could have ever happened to the North American scene, because what it's doing is it's forcing these polished pros, by no means perfect players, but polished pros in the sense of they know when to push, they know when not to push, they have the discipline to make the right plays under the right circumstances, how to rotate CT side, they know how to make information plays, they know how to call, and they know how to interact and how to behave. And what was before like a very closed circle at the very top of the best professional players in North America, now it becomes open, and all these other players, all these premier players come in, and you see guys like Dazed and guys like whoever else like just kind of tilting, getting upset at how they're playing. Well, the cool thing is these guys are actually streaming it. So these younger players can go back and watch the VODs if they want to, and they can get way better. So these younger guys have an appetite, like an absolute appetite to prove themselves, and they're queuing for FPL quite a bit, right? And for some of these guys, it's like their first time playing with like, you know, these top level players that they know are like really good. So they're probably like a little uncertain. I mean, it happens to everybody. If you ever played with somebody who you think is really good, you get a little self-conscious about what you're doing. You get a little bit, you're not really comfortable, and you know, you're so self-conscious that it kind of interrupts your ability to think for yourself very quickly, or your flow. And that's the thing. These younger guys need exactly more time and experience exactly like this. Like, they are the ones who are going to benefit so much from FPL. You know, they're going to get ridiculed, maybe shit on, yelled at, maybe. I don't think so as much. Like, actually, the pro players are like really good at just being like kind of like quiet when they see something wrong, and not like yelling at somebody so much. But I think some of them like say something small, or they bring it up like to their stream or something or whatever. But like, except for Steel actually does a really good job at coaching players to be better, players that he plays with. Like, that guy improves who he plays with for the long term, whereas somebody like Dazed, Steel's the kind of guy who will teach somebody how to fish, whereas Dazed is the kind of guy who is a micromanager, and he will give the person a fish every day. So Dazed will tell them exactly where to play. He doesn't necessarily say why, he just assumes that you know why he's telling you what to do, what he's telling you. And he could be kind of like, he says it really efficiently, and he just wants you to play there, and he can put you here, put you there, put you there, put you there, and you'll like, he will put everybody in the spots they need to. He'll boss everybody around, and it'll work. So that's the Dazed way of doing it, but he doesn't necessarily really tear into these guys when he probably could. The thing is he realizes like it'll just like wreck their confidence. It'll make him look like he's like really bad and toxic, and it'll put him on the bad end of the community, as if that matters. But the interesting thing is, like, all these young NA players making all these mistakes actually have like an insane amount of aim, gun skill, mechanics, movement. So if these guys just start to get the discipline, you know, knowing when to play one and dones, knowing when to play crossfires, knowing like when to rotate, knowing when to stay, knowing when to hold, knowing when to push, knowing when they should get in for flanks, knowing when like they need to hold one angle so their other teammate holds another angle, knowing when to play off contact, knowing all these different things that comes just naturally to pros because they've been doing it and doing it and doing it. Like, the FPL, these experienced players and these inexperienced players mixing is going to expose some of their decisions, and they're going to be so much better for it. And I feel almost like a lot of the pro scene maybe doesn't want this, because these are their competitors. So they're like literally making these guys better by playing with them in FPL. And it's like, okay, so what happens if you have a certain amount of skill? So you have a certain amount of gun skill, and you make it so that the person that you're playing with starts to play better, and then he's going to later on compete with you for something. I don't know what the fuck that is. It was scary. But you could tell that there's some very polished players in North America, and there's some very unpolished players in North America. So, like, a list of polished players I'm not necessarily going to get into, but there's obviously some players that, like, entirely and absolutely know what they're doing. And that doesn't mean that other players don't. But somebody also asked about what the future of NACS is, or what the future of NACS looks like. And the future of NACS is really just such a complicated issue. I'm not going to go ahead and talk about any open player, even though there's probably like a really good open player right now or something, or a really good main player, or even premier or IM players. So these are the players that you might be seeing in FPL, explicitly by name. A lot of these guys, I'm not going to name them, a lot of these guys have promise and potential. Some have like a lot of raw skill. Some are already like really, actually very well polished, complete players, but they're lacking like just a little bit of discipline or like experience or confidence. So once they get the confidence and experience, these guys are actually going to be like top pros, but that's going to come with time. And some players are players who will like one day just revolutionize the game in their own small way, and what they're bringing into the meta. I will make an honorable mention when I talk about these players to Stewie2K, because he's probably going to stay in Premier, unless he gets picked up by, I think he'll get picked up by a pro team this season actually. So Stewie2K is an example of a guy who, he's probably the first example of a guy when people start talking about the future of NACS. But in fact, I don't want this to be about Stewie2K, because I think Stewie2K gets so much undeserved attention that he hasn't really earned yet. He's actually like really not a polished pro at all. He has a lot to learn, and he jumped up pretty quickly, and he has a massive ego because of it. With that being said, when you talk about who, like dispensing of all the young fraggers, so let's talk about like the professional level talent. Just people who are in pro, not people who are in Premier, even though there are good players that are in Premier. Professional level talent, that is the future of NACS, okay? So the most obvious players out of all of these players are obviously Tarik, who is, I believe, 19 years old. Tarik's only 19. And Shroud, who is kind of getting up there when you talk about youth players, who is 21. So between Shroud and Tarik, like, you're talking about some guys who have gotten a lot of opportunities, a lot of chances, but they're not necessarily the end all be all in North America. They've had a lot of opportunities, but they didn't necessarily show them. So both these players are by no means complete players yet. And, you know, they still have a ways to go, I think, before they're polished players or find even their comfort level. Like, I still wouldn't say Tarik is comfortable doing anything but like trading, and maybe like pushing up and getting like a surprise frag. And also, he can hold his spots CT side. And that's the thing about Shroud too. Shroud can also hold his spots CT side really well. So these two have had a lot of experience, a lot of opportunity. They're in the public spotlight. They're also both not yet very versatile. That's what I was saying before. They have shown like lots of raw skill. Okay, like top of the line raw skill, aiming talent. Made some mistakes. Yet despite the mistakes they've made, these are the kinds of players that have shown that they can dominate games at the international level against likes of Fnatic, TSM, and VP. Tarik has done it on D2. Shroud has done it on multiple occasions. Like, both these guys have shown that they can step up to the plate and change the course of a game and make some real big impact against some of the top teams in the world. But most of NA has been waiting for these guys to develop into consistent star carries for like quite some time, where they can consistently go up against the best and consistently just make huge rounds happen, impact rounds, change the course of the game, and like consistently just do work and do well. And these guys still have holes in their gameplay, much like, you know, pretty much like anyone. Everyone has a hole in their gameplay. Though, as you'll find in your later years, some holes are smaller than others. And then there's, when we're talking about the future of NACS, we're talking about the once future, now forgotten hope of NACS. I wouldn't say he's forgotten because there's a big rumble about him getting unbanned. It's Swag. So Swag's insane. Swag's a complete player. Like, the kid is a complete player. He can do everything. Swag, when I think of Swag and I think of how old Swag is, Swag could have been our Olaf for our device. Like, just this player who's smart, who has aim, who knows what he's can like hold down CC sides, knows how to rotate, like has the confidence to make plays, knows when to make plays, when not to. He can op, he can shut things down with an op. So when you're talking about players in the mold of Olaf and Device, the like most depressing thing about Swag is that he's also in that mold. And he's probably only held back by his immaturity on a social level. Like, for example, wanting to play with his like friends like Desi and like a young Nitro, as opposed to like the best possible teammates. Sometimes he not buying into his IGL strategy while he'll like giggle and be like trust me. His lack of drive just naturally to be the best, as opposed to playing a game that's fun and that he's good at and he's just gonna grind because it's like fun to just play CS. And of course, the biggest thing is probably the Valve ban, suspending his career indefinitely. Obviously, at the time of his ban, pretty easily you could say Swag was one of the 2 best players in North America. And although, I mean, I'll just straight up admit it, like if you want to be a good player, you have to do this, but he has a very selfish style of play. He would almost always make some of the biggest plays in the game, like be a consistent force in winning rounds and clutching against like the toughest of opponents. I mean, the thing about Swag is like he's smart. He's really smart. He understands Team CS completely. He knows how to take advantage of his opponents. He knows what the right play is. He can opt. He's got great aim, greater movement, all around just like an all-star carry waiting to blossom that pretty much got shut short. That's what Swag meant for North America. So Swag was the true future of NACS in that sense. And the longer Swag would have gotten to play with like the likes of Dazed and Steel, actually the better. So Swag kind of fucked off his own career, not with the whole whatever thing, but when he kind of banded with AZK and Ska to be like, whoa, the environment, blah blah blah, and got Dazed and Steel cut from iBuyPower. Instead of going to DreamHack Winner with Dazed and Steel, they ended up going with Desi and Nitro. And although that gave Nitro and Desi some valuable experience and probably contributed to Nitro being as good of a player he is now, Nitro is also somebody who I'm going to talk about in a second. It really like, yeah, that's kind of like Swag. Swag does some illogical, just some very dumb shit sometimes. That's one of them. And that's just another case or example of the kid shooting himself in the foot. Not that we don't all do it. I mean, I've done it before, obviously. Shot myself in the foot, metaphorically speaking. Beyond the scope, though. So this is like the scope of the casual fan, right? Shroud, Tarik, Swag. These kids look like they have potential. So let's go into beyond the scope of the casual fan, where we could talk about the real core of the future of NACS. Okay? The entire core of the future of NACS. Now, I think when I say this, a lot of people are actually going to be mad at me. Like, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, really? Like, you think this guy is like good? Like, this guy sucks. He's not good. But the thing that I will really like highlight here, this is a huge problem endemic to NACS, and it's another thing that FPL is fixing, is like these little cliques in the North American scene where everybody just like doesn't respect anybody, doesn't think anybody's good. They're real cliquey. They're kind of like, it's in groups and out groups. They're not going to play with these certain people, and those people aren't going to play with these certain people, and this guy has a grudge with that guy, and they just need to get over it, mature, be professionals, come to work, consider it like this is part of what you do as your job. This is part of your training. I mean, when you talk about sports athletes, you don't have to like a guy to go like train with him. You don't have to like a guy to go scrim with him. You don't have to like a guy like an actual scrimmage, like in soccer or in basketball or in any sport. You just go in, you show up, you play, you do your fucking job, and you check out, because the players aren't the ones controlling the organization. The organization. You're being coached. There's a coach, there's organizational structure, there's organizational pressure. I made another video about this. And the players are all being directed by the coach, telling them like, no, like you're going to come in, you're going to do your fucking job. And if you start having problems because you can't interact with this person that you have a grudge with, you're the problem. You're the one who's like, you're going to get cut. We'll bring in some other kid who wants to come play basketball here at this school. Like you go play for a Division 2 school or something, bud. Like, I don't care. Like, either you're going to come in, you're going to do your job, or you're just going to get the fuck out. So that's what really like contributes to a very professional environment. And that's something we don't necessarily have in North America. But we really should have something like that in North America. So anyway, beyond the scope of the casual fan is the real core of the future of NACS. And I really hope I don't forget anybody, but I'm trying to keep people who are young and people who haven't necessarily gotten their shot at high levels of Counter-Strike, right? And this doesn't mean that these guys, that other people can't be the future of NACS. Obviously, they can. And it doesn't mean that these guys necessarily will be the future of NACS, but it means that they're showing indicators that they will be. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other good players, because there are good players, but those players, really, their contribution can come in as being more of role players, and every team needs role players. But it's important to know and to dictate who your carries should be and who your role players should be, and how your role players should really just accept being role players and contribute to the team the way the team needs, like, to work as a full entity. Not everybody necessarily needs to be a star player. Now, if you could take somebody with star player talent and have him, and he's okay with playing a role-playing role, and then there are other stars also on the team that are playing star playing roles, then that's probably the most ideal scenario, and it's something that, like, you could see in Fnatic or even in Envious. But the way it would go is, and I should have, like, pictures of these guys up. In fact, maybe I could pull it up in my Windows browser. Let me see if I can open up a new window here, right? And take it to hltv.com and go to the statistics section, go to the players, and let's start out in the good old United States right now. And once I'm in the United States, actually I'm in Canada right now, because there is a player that I was thinking of that I didn't put in here. So, this kid's insane. So out of all of these players, I think, like, let me refresh here. Oh shit. Okay, I did the wrong one. Bear with me. Okay, great. So out of all of these players, there's some of them that are, like, really good, there's some of them that are not. But we're gonna focus on the good ones, okay? So let's see here. The first player that I'd like to talk about, I'll talk about it in order of age, is Relyks. Ronnie Rix Baliki, this guy right here. He's 21 years old, or 22 years old, sorry. Another guy that I would like to talk about is somebody by the name of Stanislaw. So this is another guy who is really good, and he also has a teammate who has a lot of promise. He's only 18 years old, named NAF-FLY. Maybe I shouldn't do it this way. So let me just say it, like, in a list, right? So you have Rix, age 22, Shinobi, age 21, Stanislaw, age 21, NAF-FLY, age 18, Nitro, age 20, FugLy, age 20, Relyks, age 20, Vice, age 20, Davey, age 19, Silent 3M, age 20, Witmer, age 19, Autimatic, age 19, Koosta, age 19, Elige, age 20, Uber, age 20, and Sick, age 17. Now, it isn't to say that this collection of players are at the same level in their development. They are not. They are by no means in the same level of their development as players, okay? The most complete and star-ready players out of these guys are as follows, okay? Autimatic, who is 19 years old. Nitro, who is 20. Elige, who is 18. Relyks, actually, who is 20, Relyks, who is 22, NAF-FLY, who is 18, and Stanislaw, his teammate, who is 21. So, with that being said, some of these players have a lot of LAN experience for being as young as they are. And one of them, I would say, does not have that. However, they all have like an understanding of the game that would mean they're at least like polished pro players to some extent. All of them understand teamwork and supporting their team, some more than others. E.g., this guy right here. This guy, I don't know if you could see it. Should be able to. Oh. Relyks. So this guy. If you look at Relyks, his like performances don't look amazing online or whatever, but I'm not going to talk about what the scoreboard says when I talk about this. I'm going to talk about like what I see. So a guy like Relyks has a lot of like, has pretty decent spacing, awareness. He just throws some actually like really nutty flashes for his team, kind of like Steel would do. He understands how to go into contested areas. He understands like his teammates would need flashes to get into those areas, and he also has a certain amount of aim to be able to back it up afterwards. Relyks is a smart player. He's naturally gifted. He can make mistakes, so can everybody. And the more he hammers away at his discipline, the better he'll be, and the better the whole NA scene will really be for it, because he's actually a really good guy to have in the scene. Now, beyond that, some players have some huge downfalls, like, and they know what it is, but they have a really good intuitive feel for the game. That's what I would say about Relyks, Ronnie. Like great spacing, awareness, and then you have some players like Nitro or Elige. Nitro being here, he's 20, just has been able to go into the pro scene internationally and absolutely do extremely well, even on LAN. And the same thing is for Elige. Elige is also broken through. They have great gun skill, great mechanics, and they're starting to understand. These two, Nitro and Elige, are starting to become more polished because they're playing with Adren and Hiko than like and their coach TB James than any of these young guys. So they kind of just, it's kind of like they went into an incubator for like a startup. They just went into like an accelerator program, and they're just getting way better than everybody else who at a certain level was probably just as good as they were. Or not. Depends. But I would say out of all these guys, right, the most promising, like, Elige and Nitro are quickly getting better and patching up their holes too. But the most promising of these guys, the most promising of all, is Autimatic. Okay, Autimatic is just a very special talent in North America. He is a complete player who I'd say he's just an absolute complete player, still polishing his craft at outsmarting his opponents and disciplining himself. He has good mechanics. He has like some of the best mechanics. Understands teamwork. He gets the concepts down. He understands his positioning and his timing. His timing is a little like intuitively off, but it's still pretty good. Like, he only lacks discipline and sometimes outthinks himself. And I think the outthinking himself is what fucks with his timing. However, he has shown great flashes of brilliance. In fact, maybe if you did more homework and like did more demo review, he would get his, and like studied the timings of his opponents, he would get his timings down perfectly because he'd know what they're doing. But like, just generally in this kid's head, like he's almost like a child, like a prodigy. He's not a child anymore. He's 19. And I mean, he's shown great flashes of like brilliance, some really counter meta play. Like basically, if swag remains banned, Autimatic is a good surrogate for North America, like for swag. With that being said, out of all these guys, Elige has true star fragging potential as an aggressive rifler. His age, being 18, combined with his raw skill and natural intelligence, Elige is like the valedictorian of his class. Just one of the most smartest kids, very book smart, very capable of... He can learn things very quickly, very quick to adapt to things as well. And you see that in his play. All of that makes him an ideal choice for being one of NA's true upcoming star players, like on the international level. And a player like Nitro is flat out perhaps the most gifted player in all of North America. We talk about like genetics or something. And the more he rounds out his game to be complete and finds his comfort zone, the closer he will be to being one of the finest entry fraggers in the world, which I would still classify as like being a role player. So that's what I meant earlier when I said you could have guys who are star players, but they're playing role-playing roles like entry fragging. So as opposed to playing a star carry role. Beyond that, you have another batch of players who I would say are also extremely talented. And it's interesting because I'd say like 3 of these guys are oppers. But we have FugLy, who is age 20. Shinobi, who's age 21. There's a reason why he's on this list. NAF-FLY, who's age 18. Koosta, who's age 19. Witmer, who's age 19. Silent M, who's age 20. And then you also have Davey, who's age 19. Who's also Silent's teammate. So some of these guys have teamed up. At like, there's almost always every single person on this list has one teammate also on this list. I think. I don't think anybody's like really alone except for like Relyks, or yeah, except for like Relyks, really, or maybe Autimatic. Mostly because Sansington has shown a lot of like play and ability, but I wanted to kind of keep. Like, Relyks was like the oldest I wanted to go on this list. I think Sansington's like 24 or something, 23. Oh yeah, actually, one of the most talented players in North America, easily. I forgot to mention him earlier. He would definitely be in the group with like Autimatic and Nitro, and I knew I forgot somebody, is Roca. Pretty sure Roca's like 20 or something. Yeah. And Roca, like, he's very different than every player. He's a very smart player. I would say CT side, he is absolutely like a disciplined player. The only issue is, I think in late round situations, Roca's flow gets interrupted and he becomes less decisive. And you could even say like it seems like he's lost, in the sense that he hasn't completely met his comfort level where he's comfortable doing what he wants to do and just going out and doing it and just kind of like reacting. He's kind of thinking about the process of what he wants to do or where he wants to go or where he should be. And I think he's the kind of player who really needs to be comfortable, or maybe just needs more experience in super late round situations or clutch situations. And once he finds his comfort level, he will be a complete player. He is easily one of the most talented and gifted players in North America. When I said Nitro is flat out perhaps the most gifted player in all of North America, like guys like Roca and Skadoodle are close to that, if not surpassing Nitro. So that's what we talk about when we talk about Nitro's competition in terms of like gun skill out of these guys. So beyond that group of players, so there's another batch of players And I think I talked about his teammate Timothy Autimatic Ta, Teamless Tim, as he was referred to many times. But yeah, that batch of players. Oh, also, I don't know if I mentioned NAF-FLY, but a player like NAF-FLY is probably a little reckless. Easily understands where to place himself in the game. I think of him like a little mini Shroud. He's the kind of guy who wants to like go in third and necessarily bait. He's not very supporty, but he has like good aim, good positioning, good awareness. He can trade frag. He can like make plays. He can push. He doesn't make the dumbest of mistakes. Like he can be reckless, but he almost always bails himself out with his aim. So NAF-FLY is definitely somebody who just needs to get even more and more polished, and also needs to get down the teamwork aspect. So I mean, like if you were to take players and like combine them, like if I were to combine like Relyks with NAF-FLY, or somebody like, I don't know, Davey with NAF-FLY, like I'd probably get a really good player out of that. Or Shinobi with NAF-FLY. But yeah, obviously a lot of these players are just gonna be super gifted in terms of gun skill. Another guy who I wanted to put a little bit of a highlight on is Stanislaw. Definitely one of the smarter players I've seen play. I don't know if he's like a hard worker or something, but like this guy just seems to be prepared everywhere he goes. I don't know how much like work he puts in individually, but like it just shows that he understands what his opponent is doing. I don't know if he's like some kind of chess prodigy as a kid or something, but he's a guy I've seen on multiple occasions, like just not even noticing him playing a role-playing role, and being able to do really well despite playing like a role-playing role. Like he entry frags and still manages to do well and find success. He can support his teammates and set them up, and he still manages to do well and find success. And the way he supports his teammates seems to be very good, like in terms of his awareness and how he's setting up his teammates. Another player that I actually do want to talk about is Rush. Rush is a guy who I think he's pretty smart. I think he knows how to exploit some things in the game. But, I mean, I think, I don't know, maybe it's like his aim is inconsistent. Sometimes his aim seems really, really on point. And then other times it's just not there at all. And I don't necessarily know what that's about. But he's definitely one player who I would say like can just come in, surprise you. But his consistency is like a major factor. Sometimes he's just, it's like he's bipolar or something. Like he's just not there at all. Another guy that I think I could look at is Hades. Hades showed some promise, but he's almost always like not playing a fragging role. And even when he is playing a fragging role, I don't necessarily know that he's able to make the plays that he needs to be making all of the time that he needs to be making them. Beyond that, I think that you can still look at other players like those guys, like FugLy, for instance, who I would say is a step above the players I just mentioned in the terms that he is very like polished. I've never seen the player have better timing in NA in like these types of young players than FugLy, who's 20 years old and is playing with Adren and Hiko. FugLy, sometimes when FugLy's aim is on, like you see FugLy the true star carry. And when FugLy's aim isn't on, you see a role player who can contribute to his team's success without getting a massive amount of frags. Just in terms of map control, information, fake throwing, some decent flank, some good timing on some things. Like every time you see a guy like FugLy, you see that he's just almost right there, like just on the cusp of making an entirely amazing play. And all I think that I want to see out of FugLy is just for him to do like massive amounts of aim training all of the time and just like have insane aim and like, I don't know, get right levels of spray control. Beyond those guys, I could then look into the next group of young players, which is probably Shinobi, age 21. Now, Shinobi is not somebody people know very well yet. He is the in-game leader of Denial. I think he controls a lot of what they do and how they do it. His picture isn't up here, but should be. And his teammate Witmer. But to go back to Shinobi, I would say particularly has a good grasp of the game. Like some of these players in this next batch of players have shown flash their brilliance, but they're lacking one core aspect of their game, like a huge hole, in order to be polished players. Some lack the aim to truly be a dominating force, whereas they do have a good grasp of the game otherwise, like FugLy and Shinobi. Shinobi particularly makes this list due to him being NA's probably next great in-game leader, as long as he continues to carry the burden of the role. He has shown a fantastic ability to set up his team for success, suiting their strengths, and the smarts to really take advantage of his enemies. The other few players, like NAF-FLY, I would put in this group. Again, just needs general discipline, awareness, not to just continuously being bailed out by his aim, which is an insane levels of aim. But I would say that Koosta, age 19, Witmer, Silent 3M, and Davey all make this list. The other two, Koosta and Witmer, are some of the most skilled oppers in the region in mechanics, like just gun skill and aim movement. They have dueled each other several times, but have shown some flaws in their game, between either a lack of discipline in Witmer's case or seemingly a lack of confidence, maybe in Koosta's. Both have been shut down by being their own worst enemy. Once these players discipline themselves and minimize their risk taking, or in Koosta's case, just find the confidence to just do the things that they do against weaker opponents, they will find great success ahead of them. They will probably, like any new player in international lands, need some time to find their comfort zone, really build a healthy confidence going forward. As for Silent 3M, I've seen this guy actually just make really smart peaks at all times and even show some pretty good gun skill. Of course, he has been and will be out-opt by guys like Koosta and Witmer, but he definitely gives himself, like, he plays it smart, so he plays it the right way, and if he gets out-opt, it's like do it on LAN, really. Like, let's see when we both have the same ping, who's going to win these battles. And that's what I really like about a guy like Silent. Davey, I would say, is like somebody who understands the bigger picture of the game. He can also frag. He can put himself in very successful positions, outsmart his opponents sometimes, and really get the best of them and win crucial rounds and kind of move forward. I've always liked what I've seen out of Davey, actually. And if you listen, Method streams their games a lot, so if you listen to Method's comms, one thing that I've noticed is Davey's the one calling, and the way he's calling, like, makes it just absolutely infuriating for other teams to play against them, and it kind of gives them a leg up over teams that might try to bully them or take advantage of them. And they gather a lot of information. Like, he's playing the game the way it should be played, the way he's calling it, but I don't think his team has the tools required to move forward. Now, beyond that, if he were to put himself in a fragging role, he could probably frag really well. The final three players that I want to really talk about are young, probably the least polished out of all these guys. Young, unpolished. They violate some cardinal fundamentals of the game, but have enough aim and movement to bail themselves out of it most times. Their age, Lack of experience and raw skill, however, make them clear candidates to one day be future stars in this game as long as they continue their development. Uber, age 18, Sick, age 17, and Vice, age 20. All of these guys show absolute promise to be part of like a class of players that can come in and just be the future of NACS, and as long as they continue to get better, these are guys who can really up the level of play in Counter-Strike. And that's what's really needed. It's not needed that these guys come in and they just like replace the guys that play and that they just start like shitting on kids in Europe. It's not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen that way at all. These guys need to mix in with the very polished professional players like Hiko, like Dazed, like Steel, like AZK, like Skadoodle, like Adren, and like even Anger, XP3, and they need to learn from these other guys. And once they learn from these other guys, they can then go on to apply what they've learned to their game and take that knowledge, combine it with their skill, their gun skill, make it a process, and then stay where they're at in the teams that they're on or other teams around the same level. And then when they play against the top teams, they make things a lot more competitive. They force them to play even more proper CS, and they sharpen each other. Hardstone, sharp knife. So you have two knives, they're sharpening each other. Before, NA has always just been, there's been this disconnect, and the top teams in NA would just get zero practice. They would get zero practice out of the better teams in NA. They would get zero practice. They wouldn't get any better for it. They wouldn't get like any better at the game or anything like that, because these other teams like just didn't. They would just get shit on really if they played them. They couldn't compete. They couldn't force these guys to actually play a high level of Counter-Strike because they were scrimming. So they were doing like illogical things or unpredictable things or high risk plays just to catch people off guard. And the thing is like they were doing kind of one trick pony stuff that's not going to work in a best of 3 stuff. It's not going to work over and over again. And in reality, the players being able to play at a higher level, being able to understand Counter-Strike at a higher level, and then going in and scrimming against these top teams are going to make the top teams better, and they're going to make these guys better. And hopefully throughout this process, everybody's just going to improve in North America, and then there'll be hopefully it'll trickle down. So hopefully you'll see even these main players and these lower premier players kind of mixing, and you see people on the Face It FPL grind now, and they'll probably even mix even more. And once those guys mix even more, they'll sharpen finally these other players. And that's really all I want to say about FPL and the future of North American Counter-Strike. Thanks for watching. Be sure to please like the video if you did get to this point. I doubt that anybody did, but if you did, you can type balloon in the comments below, and I'll know that you got to this point in the video. Also, please subscribe.